Welcome back, focused learners. Today, we're diving into a genuinely unsettling explainer of a dark, graphic novel-style philosophical fable called The Red Spirit and the Architecture of the Void. It's a grim, gothic narrative absolutely dripping with Nietzschean philosophy and philology. We're going to explore how a society's obsession with sterile logic, data, and hyper-rationalism can lead to a terrifying, total internal collapse. Just listen to this chilling hook. This quote comes directly from the Red Spirit, who is basically the manifestation of suppressed humanity, speaking to our protagonist, the hyper-rational sage. It perfectly sets the stage for our descent into a world where efficiency has essentially murdered meaning. As we unpack this source material, you'll see exactly how biological and intellectual comforts can masquerade as genuine purpose, leaving the human soul completely and utterly starved.
All right, let's start with Section 1, Absolute Control and the Engineered City.
Picture this. We begin in a grim city of stone and steel, a place engineered for absolute perfection, where law courts operate with mechanical regularity. But look at the stark thematic contrast of this environment. On the outside, the sage has achieved absolute physical safety. The granaries are completely full, but on the inside, well, the citizens exhibit a terrifying internal emptiness. Notice the strange flatness in their eyes. It's almost as if the very organ of longing has been surgically excised by the state. The external perfection is just a mask for an echoing void.
Before we go any further, we have to define this concept, which reads like something out of a forbidden tome. The vacuum. And notice the spelling there with the K. This is the active negative. It's not just an empty space, right? It's a violent inward pull created when the human spirit is systematically evacuated by all this hyper-rationalism. It's a black hole created the moment you strip away the messy, biological realities of being human.
Moving into Part 2, The Hollow and the Feast of the Clerk. To really understand this void, we get this incredibly vivid scene. The sage is observing a clerk eating his midday meal. At first, it's just cold observation. The sage reaches for his ledger to jot down the clerk's caloric efficiency. But then, sudden biological chaos erupts. The active negative literally heaves violently within the clerk's hollow chest, and from that terrifying void, the red spirit coalesces, taking the color of blood, raw, unfiltered, and intensely physical.
This moment brilliantly illustrates the core clash of our fable. You have the sage's sterile data pitted directly against the spirit's mocking, bloody corrections. And I love this part. The spirit actively mocks the sage's hollow ledgers. It's like you can count the calories and track the physical security all you want, but your spreadsheet is entirely blind to the fact that meaning is lacking, the organ of longing is excised, and human value has been completely voided.
Delivering this dialogue with this theatrical, almost demonic intensity, the spirit points right at the clerk's plate. You provide him the pleasure of a full stomach to mask a psychic vacuum. His pleasures give him no value, for he is merely a vessel voided of substance. The spirit is driving home that you can optimize the mechanics of eating, but if the why, that profound human purpose, is absent, you just have a spiritually famished society.
Which brings us to Section 3. The Crumbling Tower of Reason.
The sage retreats to his high tower, going way above the cloud line to escape the groan of the earth. But absolute control is a total illusion here. Try to put yourself directly in the sage's mind for a second. There I stood atop my sterile scaffolding, clutching my finest pamphlets that mathematically proved the sacred was irrational. I called this height reason, but then the stone beneath my feet began to crack. The terrible patience of the abyss was breaking through my perfect floorboards.
To understand the sage's fatal flaw, we have to look at this core Nietzschean concept, poor reason. The sage operates entirely on this superficial intellect. It's essentially an intellectual escapism because he is absolutely terrified. He fears the biological chaos of the blood, so he builds upward into sterile, vertical heights, mistaking his distance from humanity for mastery over it.
Emerging from the very fissures of that breaking tower, the spirit confronts him with a devastating truth. The spirit explains that the sage's hyper-rational logic isn't enlightenment at all. Actually, it's a form of deep internal shame. The sage is terrified of the uncontrollable human condition, so he built a golden mask to cover his repressed, silent depths. The spirit tells him point blank, your logic is just a masquerade of the hollow.
Let's look at Part 4. A debate in the abyss upon the bones of the corpse. As the tower literally breaks apart around them, we witness this incredibly heated, visceral debate standing upon the bones of the questions the sage tried to bury. The sage desperately defends his legacy, shouting that he conquered the soul's malaise through math and effortless efficiency. But the spirit completely dismantles him about human purpose. It exposes his intellectual pleasures as tainted, nothing more than wind howling through an identical vacancy. Absolute spiritual bankruptcy.
The spirit is absolutely relentless here. It acts as the haunting voice of the repressed unconscious, reminding the sage over and over that his sterile heights offer zero true value. You simply cannot elevate yourself out of the human condition.
Instead, the spirit champions what Nietzsche called the great reason. In philological terms, this represents the chaotic, instinctual, and vital truth of the physical body. It's the blood, the passion, the suffering, and the joy that the sage's perfectly mechanized city has systematically tried to erase.
And now, Section 5, the mirror of the void, and a terrifying revelation.
As our grim fable hits its climax, the sage is forced to look down into the eyes of the very people he claims to have saved. The sensory horror here is palpable. He experiences this massive vertigo. It's described as opening a cupboard and finding only the open sky. He realizes his population isn't just empty, they have been actively evacuated of their souls. The active void has triumphed.
And here is the defining, horrifying moment of the story. The sage stares into his own reflection in the glass of his crumbling tower, but instead of seeing his sovereign golden mask of control, he sees the red spirit looking back at him, laughing from within. This visual contrast proves the ultimate tragedy. The sage's internal emptiness matches his external appearance of absolute control. He has become completely indistinguishable from his hollow tower.
The spirit delivers the final blow from within the mirror, confirming the fable's darkest thesis. Tyrannical pleasure, perfectly balanced equations, physical safety. It all means absolutely nothing without the soul. You cannot derive human value from a ledger, and his entire sovereignty is built upon a psychic vacuum.
Finally, Section 6, Gravity, the Great Reason and the Descent.
To wrap up our philosophical descent, we have to look at what actually grounds us when these hollow towers inevitably fall. In this story, gravity is called the truest philosopher. The spirit forces the sage to acknowledge gravity, violently pulling his arrogant vertical claims back down into the dirt, back into the messy, suffering, but entirely real human experience that he so desperately despised. So let's quickly summarize the critical takeaways from this Nietzschean analysis. First, absolute control provides zero meaning if it ignores the body's truths. Second, logic and data ledgers cannot cure a society that is spiritually famished. And third, to find true value, we have to abandon the poor reason of sterile intellectual heights and embrace the great reason of the blood, the full, chaotic spectrum of human reality.
I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Take a look at the structures of comfort, data, and efficiency in your own life. Have we built our own towers of hyper-rational safety only to look into the mirror and realize the answer is lacking? Think about what you might be sacrificing for the sake of a perfect ledger. Until next time, keep exploring the depths, focused learners.